Hey everybody, it's Ron from Pick Dawgz, and welcome back to the NFL edition of Ron's Rundown. We're going to go over the final games of the regular season on Sunday in Week 18. If you like what you see, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to put your football picks in the comment section below. And if you're looking for my best bets, the games I love the most in the NFL and other sports, you can find those at the Premium Picks tab at pickdawgz.com. Alrighty, here we go. Here are the games for Week 18 in the NFL. First up, the New York Giants taking on the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles are a small favorite at home. Total is below 40 right now, so one of the lower totals of the week. And we know Week 18, or the final week of the regular season in the NFL, not necessarily the best for entertainment value, and the same thing goes for betting value, because for me, there's just not a lot of meat on the bone with Week 18. There's a lot of uncertainties, whether teams have already ruled out certain players as they prepare for the playoffs, or teams that maybe have a nice lead in the second half of these games start to pull their starters as well. You know, it makes it pretty tough to handicap. And I think when you look at the Giants and Eagles, the Giants played well last week, got the outright win over the Colts. Still a team, though, that not necessarily in their best interest to win a game like this, because they would like to help their draft stock. And they were looking like they were going to get the number one overall pick before winning that game against the Colts. Now they're anywhere fourth right now, it looks like, in the draft, and things could change this week. But for me, I'm still going to lean towards the Eagles. They're going to be resting a lot of players. It's why they are only a small favorite against the Giants at home. But I still think the backups for Philadelphia are superior in this game, and I think they win this game and cover the number. Next up, the Carolina Panthers taking on the Atlanta Falcons. The Falcons are a pretty sizable favorite at home, and this is a game where Carolina obviously not playing for anything, but the Falcons are still technically alive in the NFC South standings, though last week's loss, and really heartbreaking loss in Washington and D.C., was really the kind of the final nail in the coffin, because now the Falcons not only need to win this game, but the Buccaneers will have to lose to the Saints as a 13.5-point home favorite, which is very unlikely. So the Falcons still, like I said, technically not out of it. Definitely going to look to win this game, but if they check the score at halftime between the Bucs and Saints and see Tampa Bay up 28-0, I think Falcons may be looking to take their foot off the pedal a little bit in this one. But I still think they're the much better team. We saw the Panthers get crushed last week in Tampa Bay. Just really nothing, no defensive stops at all, basically, in that ball game. They gave up over 400 yards and over 500 yards and 5 yards per carry on the ground. Baker Mayfield had a big day, a lot of passing touchdowns. I got to go with the Falcons in this one and lay the points. Next up, we have the Washington Commanders taking on the Dallas Cowboys. Now, this is a game where Washington definitely has an incentive to win this game and to hold its sixth spot in the NFC standings, because right now, if the season were to end today and the current standings held, the Commanders would play the Rams in the first round of the playoffs. But let's say Washington loses this game and Green Bay wins its game against the Bears. Green Bay is now number 6, and they'll play the Rams in the first round, while the Commanders would have to go on the road against the Philadelphia Eagles, which, the Commanders just beat the Eagles, so, maybe it wouldn't be a terrible matchup, but I think Washington and Green Bay would both choose to play the Rams in the first round than they would the Philadelphia Eagles. But nonetheless, I still think that Dallas can compete in this game and look to play the role of spoiler like they did against the Commanders earlier this season. You could argue, Commanders playing with revenge in this ball game, but they're also in a clear letdown spot after a emotional comeback and overtime win over the Falcons. They were down double digits at halftime, were able to storm back, go to overtime, and win that game on a walk-off touchdown. So I think this game's going to be close. I still think Washington wins the game, but I think it's by a field goal or less. So I'm going to take the points with the Cowboys. Next up, we have the Chicago Bears and the Green Bay Packers, just talking about the Packers in the last game. And this one, we see Green Bay as a big favorite, looking to bounce back from one of their worst performances of the season. The final score doesn't really say it, but Green Bay was outgained 441 to 271 in that ball game, first down 26-17. And their offense really didn't do much in the beginning of that one. They started to get going late in the second half and kind of dressed up the score a little bit late, but not what you want to see for Green Bay as we near the playoffs, especially a team that I said I liked to win the Super Bowl last week. I didn't love what I saw last week, that's for sure. But when you look at this matchup, Chicago, their offensive line is just in miserable form right now. 7 sacks allowed last week against Seattle. Not necessarily a defensive juggernaut there, and only scoring 3 points with 11 first downs against the Seahawks. Not what you want to see. I think the Packers are pretty frustrated. Like I said, they're still playing with something trying to get to that 6th spot if the Commanders were to lose this week. And, Green Bay would definitely take the game against the Rams over the Eagles. They already beat the Rams earlier in the season, but give me the Packers in this one. I'm going to lay the points. Next up, we have the Houston Texans taking on the Tennessee Titans. Now, this is a game where we see a lot of the Texans starters being rested in this one, as they've already clinched the AFC South. No reason to go crazy. You're pretty much locked into the seed that you have in the AFC playoff picture. And, we always say you never want to limp into the playoffs, but the Texans, they've done that. In the second half of the year, they have struggled. Their offensive line has not been great basically all season, but even more so in recent weeks. They lost to this Titans team a few weeks back in a pretty exciting game, 32-27 the final, but that was a game where they gave up 4 sacks. They couldn't run the football. This Texans team has been held under 100 rushing yards in 3 straight games and 4 of the last 5. Not what you want to see going into playoff action, but for me, I think their defense is good enough in this game to keep it close, keep it respectable. I think they bounced back from that rough Christmas Day showing against the Ravens. I'm going to lean towards the under in this game. Not my favorite game on the board. This is not my favorite card, but I'm going to lean towards the under. Next up, we have the Jacksonville Jaguars taking on the Indianapolis Colts. The Colts are a sizable home favorite. Total is in the mid-40s. Now, last week, the Colts were still in the mix in the AFC playoff picture. They needed a win against the New York Football Giants. They didn't get a win against the New York Football Giants. A 12-point loss outright as that big favorite. We were on the Giants in that game. I didn't think they would win it outright, but a offensive explosion by Drew Lock and company. Malik Neighbors also one of his best days of the season. And now the Colts are eliminated from playoff contention. Not much to play for in this game, but the Jaguars also, in their best interest to probably lose this one and get a better draft pick for next year. Players play, though. We saw it with the Giants. They were number 1 in the draft. If things stay the same, if they kept losing, the Giants would draft number 1. But they went on and win that game against the Colts outright, and now they are further back in the draft standings right now. But when you look at this game, I just think the Colts are too much offensively. Didn't want to lay 7.5 with the Colts on the road against anybody, but I'll lay less than a touchdown with the Colts at home, and especially against the Jaguars team. I just don't think that's the offense to keep up for 4 quarters. So give me the Colts in this one. I'm going to lay the points. Next are the Buffalo Bills and the New England Patriots. The Bills are a small favorite on the road. I think the Patriots win this game outright. I think Buffalo is going to be resting a lot of their starters. The Patriots already were very competitive against Buffalo a couple of weeks ago. They had more total yards, more first downs, 28-19. The Patriots are, it's in their best interest to lose this game and draft number 1, but it hasn't stopped teams in the past. I mean, just last week with the Giants or even last year with the Jets. This is a young team with a first-year head coach that's already being questioned in terms of whether he should be the coach going forward. I expect the Patriots to play this one very seriously, and especially against a rival at home. So I'm going to go with the Patriots in this game, take them plus the points. Next up, we have the Saints and the Bucs. The Bucs are a giant favorite in this one, the biggest favorite of the week in the NFL. And it's simple. If the Bucs win this game, they're in. They clinch the division, and I don't expect anything different in this one. I think Tampa Bay already showed last week against an inferior opponent and a bad defense. They could take advantage. They scored 48 points, 33 first downs, and 551 total yards. Baker Mayfield had a huge day, one of his best days of his career. And I don't think the Bucs take their foot off the pedal until maybe the very end and in terms of resting players with a big lead. The Saints have just not been competitive in recent weeks. Another loss last week against the Raiders of all teams by 15 points. Give me the Bucs in this one. I'm going to lay the points. Next are the Seahawks and the Rams. The Seahawks are a sizable road favorite as the Rams have already clinched their division. They're locked into the number 3 spot in the NFC standings. They'll either play the Commanders or the Packers. Both of those are tough matchups. I think if they play Green Bay, the Packers will actually be the road favorite. And if the Commanders play the Rams, then I think it's going to be a close spread, maybe a pick 'em. So not going to be easy in the first round for the Rams, in my opinion. They'll worry about that next week. In this game, I think Seattle takes advantage of the backups the Rams have in the game. Seattle, it was a roller coaster season basically. I mean, they could finish with a 10-7 record and still miss the playoffs, which is disappointing. But when you go on 3 2-game plus losing streaks throughout the season, it's really tough to get there. And the Seattle, it was an up and down year, 3-0 start, then they lose 3 straight, and they lost 5 the next 6 after that 3-0 start as well. And the offense has really struggled in recent games. The offensive line, I mean, Geno Smith has gotten sacked a lot. And I mean, 6-3 final against Chicago last week. The defense was excellent, but the offense just has not been there. I still think, though, that Seattle takes advantage of this particular matchup, ends the season with a win and a cover. Give me the Seahawks in this one. I'm going to lay the points. Next up, we have the Dolphins and the Jets. The Dolphins right now are the small road favorite, but this is a game that could go back and forth in terms of the spread through 0. And the Dolphins have done well against bad teams in recent games. They took care of business against the Jets a couple of weeks ago, earned wins against the 49ers and the Browns as well. And while this is definitely the same situation where they're playing in a below 500 team, I still think the Jets can get their revenge. The Jets last week, defensively, giving up 40 points, not what this defense expected at the beginning of the year, what it looked like could be one of the better defenses in the league. But that was the Buffalo Bills on the road. Now back at home, I think the Jets can end the season with a win. This should be probably a pretty low-scoring game. It's why we see the total where it is. But in the end, I think the Jets bounce back enough defensively, do enough on the offensive side as well in the run game to grab this win. And with Miami also having no Tua in this one, I do think they struggle to move the ball consistently. So give me the Jets in this one. Not my favorite game as well, but I'm going to take the Jets on the money line. Next up, we have the 49ers and the Cardinals. We're going to see the Cardinals as the favorite in this one. Both of these teams played in kind of different styles of games last week. The Niners played in a shootout, 40-34 final against the Lions, while the Cardinals played in a low-scoring defensive battle, 13-9, a loss against the Rams. The Cardinals, though, still move the ball quite well in terms of 24 first downs, 396 total yards, 5 yards per carry on the ground. San Francisco's defense is just nowhere near what we expect. Similar to the Jets, I mean, recent weeks, the Niners' defense has really fallen off. The injuries have played a role in that, but the Niners didn't force a single punt in that last game against Detroit, and it's tough for me to see where they're going to get a lot of stops in this one. But the Niners' offense has so many weapons, and even without Brock Purdy potentially, I think they'll be able to move the ball in a not-so-great Cardinals defense. So give me the over in Cardinals-Niners. This total is just too low for me. Next up, the best game on the board by far, the Sunday Night Football contest on NBC, a game where it actually means something for both teams in the matchup. The Vikings and the Lions. The winner wins the NFC North. The loser still makes the playoffs as a 14-3 wildcard team. But this is a matchup where you got clash of styles. The Vikings, excellent defensive team. Their offense was strong down the stretch as well, but one of the better defenses in the league. The Lions, their defense, a lot of injuries. Aiden Hutchinson going down early in the season, definitely hurt. They've underperformed at times, but this offense, one of the more potent offenses we've seen in recent years in the NFL, and they've just been able to move the ball and score against almost anybody, even against these Vikings at the beginning of the season in Minnesota. Almost 400 total yards and 31 points. They put up 42 against the Bills, 40 just last week in San Francisco. It's tough to go against this Lions offense for me in a home game in this matchup for a franchise that just hasn't had too many moments like this in its entirety. So I got to go with the Lions in this game. Sam Darnold, for me, he's been excellent this year. I mean, a career best year for Sam Darnold, one of the player or candidates for comeback player of the year. But I still think that he could make a few mistakes in this ballgame, similar to what we saw with Brock Purdy last week, where Purdy and company, they were moving the ball well, they were scoring points. It just takes a couple of mistake throws and turnovers that'll completely derail your game. The Niners were in the lead at halftime in that ballgame by 8 points. They lose it by 6. I could see something here where the Lions score at will almost every single drive, and it just takes one mistake by Darnold for them to be able to capitalize and run away with this game. And this is only a 3-point spread, so I got to go with Detroit, and this one should be an excellent game. Can't wait to watch it. And that's it. Those are the Sunday games in the NFL for Week 18. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe and put those football picks in the comments section below. Again, if you're looking for my best bets, you can find those at Pickdawgz Premium. There's also a link in the description. As always, this is Romanelli. Good luck.